everybody. I'm Catenya McHenry with the Fxck podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today, I am really excited about this episode. We are talking about fear of leaving an abusive relationship. And my guest today is Heather Bellino. She is the Chief Executive Officer of the Texas Advocacy Project. We have been wanting to do this, or at least I've been wanting to talk to you about this for a very long time. So I'm so glad we were able to make this happen today. She has been there since 2005. She's championed and empowered victims of dating and domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, stalking, and human trafficking in Texas. Under Heather's leadership, TAP provides free, life-changing legal and social services to thousands annually, breaking cycles of abuse and transforming lives. Through innovative initiatives, Heather raises awareness of critical issues, dismantles stigmas, and fosters open dialogue to drive systematic change. Prior to joining TAP, she had an extensive background in sales and marketing. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to
Absolutely.
visit with you.
Oh my gosh. Well, this topic is so important. It's a lot of what has been in my background. A lot of what we're going to talk about is based on my experience that you deal with cases that you deal with every single day and annually. And I'm really excited. This is going to be an important episode for victims and survivors who are trying to leave abusive relationships. Every podcast episode, I start by asking my guests one question, which is, what is your greatest fear?
My greatest fear, that's a real solid question, right? I don't really have very many fears, but I think I've structured my life in such a way that I mitigate risk. I would say my biggest fear is losing control of what I need to control in order to mitigate risk.
Yeah.
So that's it. I'm always kind of like one step ahead, like playing a puzzle game and like a chess game in my mind. Like, how do I get from here to there as seamlessly, safely, and emboldened as possible?
Ooh, I love that. Yeah, awesome. Well, tell me a little bit about your work with the Texas Advocacy Project.
Oh my goodness, I love my job. Like, I'm not kidding. I love my job. The people that we serve who have self-identified in different focus groups that we have as victims before they come to see us and come to get our services, afterwards identify as survivors. And to be able to be part of that journey, to walk alongside somebody who is so courageous, to me is just the most wonderful feeling in the world. And I have to tell you, my team, I just love them. Our leadership team in particular have been around almost as many years as I have, most of them. A few of them for as many years, for 20 years, and a couple of them for 10. And, so we're all very dedicated in the idea that this is something bigger than us and that we must row that boat together to get us where we need to go, which is a space where we can help as many victims become survivors as humanly possible.
Yeah. What do you think inspires you to make a transition from sales and marketing to this work? Because that's a huge shift.
Oh, you know what? I keep describing myself as the accidental CEO, which I'm sure I should stop at some point and just sit in the truth of what happened in the past 20 years. But, I just started volunteering at Texas Advocacy Project. It was then Women's Advocacy Project. And a good friend of mine had asked me to come run the auction for what is now our black and white ball. And then she promptly left for Italy. So I was kind of left holding the bag, right? God bless her. But I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the voices that we were uplifting and the people we were serving. And so I became the volunteer coordinator on August 8th, 2005 for a whopping big, like $13,000 a year.
Oh my God.
I mean, it wasn't about anything else but figuring it out. And then just through a series of events, every time there was something that needed to be attended to, I had the space to do it. So I just, volunteer coordinator, assistant director of development, deputy executive director, then CEO.
Yeah.
So, it's just, I didn't leave the sales on purpose. I just got really, really excited to keep growing, not just the organization, but myself professionally. I mean, I'm pretty pretty altruistic, but I have
Yeah.
gained a lot personally from this too.
Yeah.
I just love it.
Yeah. Well, as you guys know, much of the work that I've been doing over the last several years or so, and much of what my book is based on, is fear. And really, that's the catalyst for this podcast, because being in, I think, an abusive relationship, fear is such a huge component of the relationship. Fear of being in the relationship, fear of what's going to happen if you leave the relationship, and also, for me, the narcissistic part of it. Narcissists use fear to keep control of their victims. So in your work, how much has fear played into the work that you do, survivors, and really helping them become survivors?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you recall when we first met, do you?
I think so.
Okay, so
Remind me, though, because we were at a market, and I think you were buying one of my books for a friend of yours.
that's exactly what happened. So, I feel like it's very important to always shine a light on this subject matter.
Yeah.
And I do that through, again, talking about Texas Advocacy Project and the civil legal services that we provide. But you were selling that book, and I looked at you and I said, I have a really good friend who is now going through this.
Yeah.
And it's one thing when I'm in my professional mode and I don't necessarily know the person quite as well.
Yeah.
But I always find it important to say, I see you.
Yeah.
I am afraid for you. But when you are ready, Texas Advocacy Project is here to help you. But it's when you are ready. So I couldn't really sit in that space with my friend and say, I'm seeing this, because that wouldn't have been fair to her, right? Like she has to come to her own empowerment. So, I grabbed that book from you and I gave it to her.
Yeah.
And then I didn't have to tell her more than I'm afraid for you.
Yeah.
Like that didn't take over the life of our friendship.
Yeah.
But that book helped her to walk that last few miles of her own journey, and she ended up being able to leave him.
Yeah.
So that gift that you gave to me by helping me to bring a different voice than my normal professional voice to a dear friend changed a life.
Yeah.
So, you're amazing. And I'm so grateful that you are here doing this fear.
You can say it.
I know. And
that's the power.
It's actually one of my favorite words.
Really,
it's
me
actually,
too.
I mean,
my gosh.
it works in almost every conversation, for fuck's sake.
Yes.
No,
I
it's
love
wonderful.
it.
My mother's going to just roll her eyes at me.
I know.
She'll love
My
me
dad
anyways.
too, but whatever. Fuck it.
Exactly. But, people do live in fear. And the whole thing is that all of these atrocities, domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, everything that you mentioned in the beginning, they're all based on power and control. And of course, after going through years of losing your own power, losing control. This is what we talked about in the beginning. For me, I don't want to lose control, right?
Yeah.
Losing your power and control creates nothing but fear. And remember, there's so much isolation that's involved. There's gaslighting. There's physical, mental, financial. All of the abuses, they culminate. And I couldn't imagine not being able to lay my head on my pillow at night and feel safe.
Right.
And so many people do.
Yeah.
I mean, we closed about 5,000 cases last year. That impacts the life of 11,000 Texans, think primary and secondary victims.
Yeah.
These parents that are going through the abuse, that the person at school and college for the first time who gets sexually assaulted, her parents, how they feel about it, the mom who's being harmed by their father, and the child in the room afraid to come out until it gets quiet and help the mom. Everybody's living in fear. And trying to break through that fear to gain your power back. It takes a very courageous person, but it also takes systems that will support them. It takes friends and allies that will not judge, because all that fear creates shame, and it shouldn't.
It's interesting you say that, shame, because I remember at one of my book signings, one of my dear friends said to me, after reading my book, she said, reading your book and the person that she knew me to be at that point, she's like, I don't know how you were in that relationship, because you were somebody who seems to be, just like very strong, very empowered. But what people don't understand, and I think where the judgment comes in, is it is hard to break out of that. When you're in that environment and you're living in fear every day and you're afraid to go home because you don't know what the space is going to be and the energy is going to be, people don't understand what happens behind closed doors and the fear that you face for yourself and your children. So talk a little bit about that and just the cases that you've worked with. I mean, you mentioned 5,000 cases this year or last year. That is insane to me. And that sounds like it's been more, the number of cases have increased over the years. But the shame and the judgment part, and really victims who've had to overcome that with their family members and their friends just to be able to be in a place where they feel safe and feel whole as a person again.
Well, let's face it, nobody falls in love with their batterer.
Yeah.
They fall in love with the person that they think they're supposed to spend the rest of their life with. And there was something there for them to fall in love.
Yeah.
And quite often, we're going to see batterers that are very charismatic, that the rest of their community would never imagine or guess that they do anything like that. And, when we're walking in that truth where everybody believes the batterer's the good person, and you start feeling like you're a little crazy.
Yeah.
Because maybe, I made that person mad. Maybe I am not good enough. Maybe all of those things come into play because they are masterful. Absolutely masterful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when that is what we consume every day, we tend to believe it too. And that's, it's unfortunate. It's also unfortunate because we don't hold people accountable to bad behavior. It's a real problem. We mentioned where we met was at a marketplace, and it happened to be at a place I frequent quite often. And there was somebody there that I knew had harmed another person. And I had shared this with people that we spent a lot of time with. And the guys that hung out with this person didn't ostracize him. They felt like, well, I can't really believe that he would do that anyways. You're telling me it's a truth, but we still hang out.
Yeah.
And I mean, I lost my mind. I'm like, you all are perpetuating this issue. Because we're not holding people accountable. I mean, it's one thing, our criminal justice system is quite flawed in this area too. So if it's not the criminal justice system's not gonna have accountability, then socially, can we at least have a little accountability there? Like, it is not acceptable to harm another human being.
Absolutely.
Period. It's not acceptable. And so we have to take some responsibility as a society to say, guess what? You're not getting a pass. You're not the type of person I want to spend time with. This is real.
And I think that is another fear, is fear of not being believed. And all of those play into fear of leaving the abusive relationship, because I think victims feel like, who's going to believe me? Because he or she, I mean, there are abusers who are women as well, just humans. But the fear of not being believed, I think, is what keeps people in relationships longer, because you see this person who is the abuser, who's also a charmer, and can go into a room and charm everybody and make people believe they are this fantastic person who has all this energy and, claims the space in the room and can go in and command the room. And it is incredible. And I've seen victims, and I've been in that situation as well, where I'm like, oh my God, he just said, fuck you to me in front of my face, and they can go in a room and act like nothing ever happened. It's crazy.
And if it's not that type of perpetrator, then it's the perpetrator that it's obvious that this is not a kind, good person. There's still so much that you have to consider if you're trying to leave an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
I know many people that are choosing, am I going to be homeless?
Yeah.
Or am I going to be able to leave this person? Or am I so financially tied that I cannot do it right now?
Yeah.
And that's why I think that with Texas Advocacy Project providing these free, that's the key there, free civil legal services is so very important, because I don't care if you are at 150% of the federal poverty level or you live in a beautiful house in Westlake, you might not have access to the finances to get yourself out. And so you're going to be making decisions about your health and welfare, and maybe that of your family, that might not be the best decision for you if you don't have access to free resources.
Yeah.
So at least with this access to free resources, you get to make a decision based on what is best for you at the time.
Yeah. Talk about some of the things that you see that victims face leading up to making that decision to leave. And then talk about a little bit about how you guys help them get past that barrier.
Yeah. You know, by the time a client comes to us, they are ready to leave. If they're accessing an attorney, then they are on the path. They're getting ready to go. But they really do need to understand what their legal rights are.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, again, talk about, power and control. They'll tell them, if you try to leave, then that's kidnapping the children. If you do this, then, you're not going to be able to get access to my money, and all the things that they may lie to them about. So we just need to talk to people about what is their specific case and what are their legal rights around that. Do they have an opportunity for a magistrate's order of emergency protection here in this area? It's called emergency protective order. Do they have an opportunity to get a temporary ex parte protective order or a protective order? Or is just straight up divorce or custody of your child what you need? Or maybe you just need help breaking your lease because the person who sexually assaulted you is 3 doors down in your apartment complex. So we just got to talk about exactly what's happening with everybody's individual case, give them the menu, so to speak, of what's available to them through the justice system in the courts, and then let them sit with it for a moment. And while they're sitting with it, then we make sure to safety plan.
What does that look like, especially here in Texas?
It's very, very individual. We have to get kind of to the root of what is the danger and lethality assessment.
Yeah.
Are there weapons in the home? Is there drug or alcohol abuse? Are there children? Do you have a support system at all? Can you have a safe word that you use? I used to play tennis, and there was one gal who made an outcry to us, and we said, okay, well, if you call us and say we're going to lob all day today on our game, that meant danger and that we would have to call the police. So you find ways to weave in certain flags for your support system to help you. It might even be, make sure there's a free path for both egresses in your home, so you don't have a couch that blocks you from running from one side to another. Don't get trapped in a bathroom or a kitchen because there are knives there, so those can be used as weapons. So it really just depends. And it might be, hey, there's very low lethality right now, but you do need to get your children's immunization records. You need copies of your Social Security. You need all of that to become available to you. So again, it's very individualized, but it is really about looking at specifics and saying, how can you stay as safe as possible while you're making the moves necessary to get long-term safety?
Yeah. What's the worst case you've seen?
Oh, I don't want to. I don't want to. I will say, we have had cases where they have been left for dead, where the perpetrator absolutely thought they had murdered their spouse or their partner, and they have crawled out of the room and gone to a neighbor's to get safety. We have had cases that we've seen where the child was murdered in front of the mother. It's too much. But it's real.
Yeah.
And it does happen, and it's not a flippin' movie. It's reality for so many people, and they need our support.
Yeah. In the cases that you've dealt with since 2005, do you feel like there have been more cases, or do you feel like there has been more reporting because people have been strengthened to report cases?
Actually, I think that those are one of the statistics that I go back and forth on. There's a lot of statistics, especially since the pandemic, that said it had increased. I can tell you anecdotally, our team feels that the lethality that we are seeing is much more dire than what we had seen in the past. I also think that statistically, there's 1 in 3 people are going to be a victim of domestic violence. 1 in 4 are going to be a victim of sexual assault. We cannot deny that the population of Texas is increasing. And if those statistics continue to ring true, then the percent of people who are being victimized is also going to increase in the state of Texas.
Yeah.
And they have rung true thus far. I will tell you, we're working with Social Venture Partners, another nonprofit, to really optimize our operations so that with the same resources, because money is finite, we can help more people. And just this past March, we closed 570 cases, or 573, roundabout. And March 24, we closed, I think, 350 or 360 cases. So we're really trying to make sure that we're as streamlined as possible and as efficient as possible so that we can make sure we're able to catch all the people that need our services, again, at Texas Advocacy Project, because those free civil legal remedies are what going to get you safety. It's that protective order, that divorce, that custody, the things we've discussed.
Yeah. I think I said 5,000 cases.
Yeah.
I misspoke. Is that right?
5,000 in 2024, but in March of 2025 versus March of 2024.
Gotcha. Okay.
We had that giant increase, something around 70%. Don't girl math me on this one, but it's a thing.
So let's talk a little bit about your recent testimony on you were at the Texas House Criminal Jurisprudence Committee in support of House Bill 36.
Yeah.
That is the Sharon Radabaugh Family Violence Protection Act. And it really covers a number of things, but it really helps survivors know where their help them know where their abuser is so they can better protect themselves and better plan. So talk a little bit about that. Your testimony was so compelling, and it really, you just put such a real light on what's happening, and listening to somebody who deals with these cases on a regular basis, but also what you're doing is so real every day. And I feel like when people are presenting testimony, anytime, no matter what bill it is, I feel like the people on the dais are these, it doesn't feel real to me. It feels like you're speaking to somebody people who don't understand exactly what's happening. So for you to be able to talk from a very real perspective about how this bill helps you do your job better in the state of Texas, it was very real. So talk a little bit about your testimony and speaking to just the aspect of the survivors in those situations, how this bill helps survivors. It helps you do your work better.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because I do think that our elected officials, for the most part, they do care about their constituents.
Yeah.
And they are actually real people too.
Yeah.
But they may not have experienced this. And again, part of my job is to bring the voice of the survivors that we have served to these conversations, because everything needs to be survivor informed. Because people really want to do well, but they might not understand secondary consequences. So they've got, just good, it's a good try, right? But if they don't understand how it impacts on a day-to-day, then how can they make good laws?
Sure.
And we really just need good laws because, again, at Texas Advocacy Project, if they're all attorneys providing the civil legal services, that menu that we discussed about what your legal rights afford you are only as good as the laws on the book. So I do enjoy going up there and sharing the voice of victims because we can't get the 5,000 people we served last year into these courtrooms, but I do try to bring it up. So this particular one I think is important for the most part because right now, as a condition of bond, a judge can say you have to wear a GPS monitoring device or have it on you, but they're not active, they're passive. So meaning that me as a victim, if I know that my perpetrator has that GPS monitor on them, I believe that somebody's watching them.
Yes.
But nobody is actively watching them.
Yeah.
It's only if something goes wrong can they go back and figure out where the perpetrator was.
Yeah.
And I have had people we work with that have gone to a gym or wherever in their own hometown, and their perpetrator was there.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can make it so that the GPS monitoring is active versus passive, then not only do we not have a false sense of security because somebody is actually tracking them, and me as the victim, I can get an app on my phone that tracks that GPS monitor so I don't accidentally go somewhere and put myself in harm's way.
Yeah.
So it is also about saying, okay, bad guy, somebody's watching you, so stay away. And also, good guy who's been victimized, you get to make informed decisions about where you go for your own safety. So I think that that's really, really important. And that's only one component of that particular bill, but there are so many bills, to be honest with you, that we're watching right now.
You said 650 bills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are monitoring a lot of bills.
Yeah.
Apparently, this session, the most bills ever were filed. So there's a lot going on up there at the Pink Building.
Yeah.
And a lot of hard work being done.
Yeah.
So right now, for us, what impacts the people we serve, there's about 650 that we're watching.
Wow.
So we'll be testifying a little bit more, and just, again, for the sake of making sure that every bill is survivor informed.
Yeah. Do you feel like the bills are enforced after they're passed? They're heavily enforced? And I asked that because I remember this has been many years when I was a reporter at KXAN. I did a story with a victim who had filed a protective order, but because the law enforcement systems were not connected, they weren't networked, they weren't able to talk to each other. So this perpetrator was able to basically skip the system. It was filed in Williamson County. He skipped off to Houston. He got arrested in Houston, but there was a warrant for his arrest in Houston. But because Houston didn't know there was a warrant in Williamson County, they didn't know that they needed to send him back, and they didn't know the warrant existed and the protective order existed. So that created a lot of fear in the victim. So this was many years ago. So I don't know from then till now if the law enforcement systems are stronger and the networks are stronger so that they're talking to each other. So things like this GPS monitoring system actually work from county to county.
You know, the systems are always only as good as the individuals. I do believe they are working better than they have before. Are they still flawed? Absolutely. Do we still need to continue to work on them? Absolutely. But I do think that if you get a protective order, there are statistics out there that say you're 80% less likely to be re-victimized. Now, that does mean that it still can happen. But it is a powerful tool because there is a consequence if you break a protective order, right? If you do go within the limits or you harm the person afterwards, it has a bigger hammer, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I do think that it's working better. Do we need to continue to work on it? Absolutely. I know that the Office of Court Administration works on a lot. We do a ton of trainings with the judiciary and the law enforcement to make sure that they understand best practices and the legislation that does pass, that we're able to go out and communicate that. Because it's not like there's a law that gets passed and then, boom, everybody knows about it 7 seconds later. That's not the case.
Yeah.
You have to educate, and then you have to understand what the consequences are. So it's a constant. It's never going to end because we're going to continue to tweak the bills until we get them all right.
Yeah.
Right? That we call those cleanups. We'll get something on the books and then we'll say, well, in practice, this made it a little bit more difficult. So we're going to go back and clean that one up. And then we're going to go tell the judiciary about how we cleaned it up. So, it's constant.
Yeah.
It's constant.
Yeah.
But it's heartbreaking when you know that there is something that could have helped them.
Yes.
And somewhere the system failed.
Yeah.
And that does happen.
Yeah.
But we just got to keep trying and keep helping one person at a time
Yeah.
and get them to safety as fast as possible
Yeah.
and empower them.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about, I have a daughter going to college. So, and I have 2 sons in college, and this is always heavy on my mind, them knowing how to protect themselves, because abusive relationships don't just exist in married situations. They exist in all types of relationships. So I would love for you to talk a little bit about just how you guys help victims that are not married, people who are not married, people who have just partners. And I think abusive relationships exist early on, even in high school and middle school as well. So talk a little bit about that and how you advise victims to, again, become survivors.
Right. You're absolutely right. And depending on your particular situation, you're going to have different resources available to you when you're talking about in school, whether it's middle school, elementary school, as you said, it happens.
Yeah.
There are protections like Title IX protections and the Clery Act. So we work really closely with a lot of independent school districts and universities to make sure that they know, again, as we said, these rules change every so often with different administrations. And so we'll come in and we'll share with them what their rights are at this time. And, we make sure that if a victim needs support during adjudication of a Title IX case, that if we have the resources available to us at the time, that we're able to help them. But there are a lot of things that can support people. We had a case, gosh, dozen years ago, maybe less, a young girl who was in middle school, and she was kind of going through a goth stage, and her hair would swing past her eye. So her mom really hadn't seen her face, so to speak, for a while. And her mom finally, she was like, brush that hair off your face. And she had a bruise there that she had been hiding. And it was because this boy in her class who wanted to date her had punched her. And again, this is 8th grade, and she had not wanted to date him. And so he hit her. And then later we find out that he'd brought a gun to school and had threatened her and her little brother.
Oh, my God.
And was going to harm her. And finally, through conversations with her teachers and the counselors and her parents, she outed all of this, abuse that she had endured. And we were able to get her a lifetime protective order. We were able to get him transferred out of that school so he couldn't go to the school any longer. We were able to make sure that she had those protections follow into high school. And she's, I guess 5-6 years out of high school now, and she's happy. And, it's insidious. You don't see it all the time, but it's there and it can be dangerous. We had another case years ago where the parents, the daughter, the victim, had been participating in a teen dating violence awareness skit in her school. And during this skit, she turned to one of our team members and said, "Oh my gosh, this story's kind of about me. My boyfriend's this way. He's so mean, and he tells me what I have to do and where I have to be, and he's texting me all the time and all these things." And it turned out that he was very abusive, and he was a grade older and was living in an apartment on his own. And when we finally got the police involved, and they found him with assault rifles and with bulletproof vests.
Oh, my God.
And he had threatened a bomb scare in the school, all these things. But even one of her parents was like, should we be doing this? He comes from a good family when we were getting her the protective order.
Oh.
It can be a lot.
So it's like fear is all around.
It's all around.
That is insane.
It
it's like, I also feel like too, with younger people, it's not expecting. You don't expect that a 14-year-old or a 16-year-old is exemplifying this kind of behavior.
Yeah. It's actually why we started our Teen Ambassadors campaign so many years ago, Teen Ambassadors of Hope. We get these young people in and we talk to them about what a healthy relationship is. We bring in Dr. Barry Bales, who's, a world-renowned leadership coach. He teaches them about being good leaders, being good upstanders and bystanders, how to use their voice, how to feel confident at that young age, but also the language around abuse. Because you don't expect it. And if you come from a healthy environment in a home and you've never seen it, but you get into this relationship with somebody. And remember, when we were young, honey, I'm old. I'm old.
Don't
I'm
say
old,
that.
I'm old. I'm holding it together, but I'm old. But when I first had my first boyfriends and they would call me all the time, or they'd come over on their bike, I'd be like, oh, they love me.
Yeah.
But it's a different world than it was then. They've got access through social media. They know where you are, what you're doing. And at first it might feel like they're showering me with attention.
Yeah.
But actually there's a fine line, and it's when it becomes a pattern of behavior where are you? Why aren't you answering my text? I don't know where you are right now. I don't feel comfortable without knowing where you are. And then it's like they have to know where you are at all times. And if you don't, then you're crossing the line, and the fury comes out because the power and control is there, and then you end up in this abusive relationship. So helping people navigate the waters of young love, like how do you row that boat?
Yeah.
So I think that's a really important conversation we have to have with young people, and we have to talk to them about what's acceptable behavior and what's not.
Yeah.
We had a kiddo that came out of that program, and he was on the school bus coming home with his friend who happened to be a girl, and she's like, oh my gosh, this guy, he loves me, and look what he just sent me. And it was, in an appropriate picture. And the young boy that had gone through our program said, you know what, that's not what love is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
I mean,
oh my
honey,
gosh,
chill
good
on
for
saying
him.
it now.
Right.
Yeah. And they're consuming, or at least, again, back in the day, we consumed all the John Hughes movies, which they were funny then. They did not stand the test of time.
No.
And we were telling young people and laughing about it, like, this is what you should consume. You should consume movies that are about getting the girl drunk, cutting her hair, having sex with her, stealing her panties. What is that?
Right?
I mean, again, it was funny at the time, not funny today.
Yeah.
But if that's what we're feeding our young people, then how are they going to get through this? So we have to feed them something different.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk a little bit about your services, because it's not just helping in the legal aspect. Talk a little bit more about what you guys do and what you offer. And when somebody comes to you, how you help them through the process and just navigating. Let's just talk about the court system, because I think that is huge. There's a lot of fear around what's going to happen in navigating the courts and knowing what to do and what to do when. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At our core, we are absolutely a free law firm. Can you imagine if you needed an attorney and you could get one for free?
If I knew that was available when I was going through this 10, 12 years ago, I mean, it would have changed everything. Yeah.
So at our core, we're a law firm. The work that we do can inform the law center side, which is, talking to elected officials. It's the trainings, it's the other things that we talked about. But this core about being able to be a free attorney for somebody who is going through abuse is just incredible. And again, I'm not an attorney. I just run the business so that they can do what they're so good at.
Yeah.
And our attorneys are fantastic.
Yeah.
But you'll come to us either because you've been referred to us through law enforcement or a shelter, or you will find us online and you will submit an application and you'll talk about what is going on with you, and we'll give you an initial consult. And at that initial consult is when we talk to you about what your case-specific legal rights are. And we will do a danger assessment. And if we feel like you need advanced safety planning, then we'll help you by pairing you with one of our social workers who will help you with that. And then with that information, you can decide what you want to do. And that might be that your case has a hearing, you have an advocate working for you and with you, and you need an attorney to do direct representation. So we might just go to court with you and take your case on and walk you all the way through it. Or more often than not, if we do take a case, then we work with you with our assisted pro se services. And listen, I love those. I find that to be so empowering for someone, because what we do is we say, okay, this is what your case looks like. We're going to work with you on your documents, your court orders. We're going to help you script out what you are going to say to a judge. So it's basically soup to nuts.
Yeah.
we're going to do your case with you, but we're not physically going to court with you. Yeah. And if you've ever fought a traffic ticket, you get nervous in front of any judge, even if it's not a big deal. Imagine if you've been through this crisis. You don't want to go in front of a judge unless you are fully supported and informed. So we're like, you're going to go to the red brick building, go up 2 flights of stairs, say this to the guy in the 10-gallon hat. He's going to point you into the courtroom. You're going to walk in and you're going to say, Your Honor. And then you've got the good housekeeping seal of approval of Texas Advocacy Project on all of your court documents. And we've got a pretty darn good batting average. Yeah. So the judge is going to know that you actually had attorney support. But if something goes off script, you say, I need a continuance. And this is how you say it. You step into the hallway and you call us because your attorney is waiting by the bat phone. If anything goes amok, we're there to help you through that. Yeah. But more often than not, you're going to be able to represent yourself. And guess what? Somebody is going to believe you because you're getting your court order. So a judge who you can be intimidated in front of is going to believe you. And that gives you that first bit of strength back. Your voice comes back as a victim. And that's when you start calling yourself a survivor. Yeah. And it's just the coolest thing.
I mean, just hearing that gives me so much relief, because I think there is so much fear leading up to that moment. The moment you decide to make the call and say, the moment you decide to leave the relationship, the moment you decide to make the phone call, the moment you decide to sit and have the conversation and make a plan, and then the moment you decide to walk into the courthouse. It's like those are each their own individual intervals of just getting you past that abusive relationship. And so hearing you say, the ways that you guys empower people is just extraordinary and amazing. And I'm so grateful that you guys exist to help all of these people who are afraid for all the reasons that they are afraid. And then when you get past that moment of just being in front of that judge, it does empower you to make you remember who you were before that abusive relationship. Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
It gives you yourself back.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That power and control. It's the first part of dismantling it.
Yeah. And I also think about that one person in your life, that abuser who told you all the lies that they did about who you are and who you will be without them and who you can't be outside of that relationship. And it's like, it's just one person. One person can do so much damage to your self-esteem, to who you are as a human being. So that one person can sever all of who you were. And that is their goal. That is what they strive to do. So that they can remain in control. So it's just so important for victims to remember, that they do have the power and the strength within them to get out of that relationship.
And that they have value.
Yes.
They have value.
Yes. Yes.
Their souls matter.
Yeah.
Their voices matter.
Yeah.
They deserve better.
Yeah.
But they have to come to that. Right?
Yeah. Thank you for the work that you do. As we end, I'd love for you to give 3 pieces of advice. I always like to end on a positive note. I mean, this is a very heavy topic that we talked about. The work you do is amazing. The laws that have been introduced, I hope will really help victims help victims become survivors and remain survivors. Yeah. But what is your 3 pieces of advice, if you could give advice?
Well, first, it's more of a call to action. It's if you believe that someone you know is in an abusive relationship, I see you, I'm afraid for you, and when you are ready, there are resources available to you like Texas Advocacy Project. Yeah. And that phone number is 800-374-HOPE. So make sure you remember that.
Yes.
But the advice is just come to things in a non-judgmental way with an open heart without adding shame to victimization and just be supportive. Yeah. Like that's my advice for the general population. I got a lot of other advice, like take your supplements, get enough sleep, work out, take care of your mental
health,
vitamin
D.
Right? Put your oxygen mask on first. I mean, I can keep going on that stuff. But in this particular case, my advice would be listen, believe, support, uplift.
Yeah, I love that. Listen, believe, uplift, support,
Yeah.
uplift.
Yeah.
No particular order.
No,
Right?
it takes it all to make it work, honey. All of it.
Thank you so much, Heather. You have, I am so just inspired by you, and I am just so grateful that you were able to do the work that you do and that you were here today to talk to us about it. I'm overjoyed in this moment. And I often feel like I've talked so much about being in a narcissistic relationship, and there are times I just get tired of talking about it. But talking to somebody like you who's doing this amazing work, it just inspires me. And I hope that this inspires so many people listening and watching as well to get out of that fucking bad relationship.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Preach.
Ugh.
Thank you so much for having me. It has been an honor, and I just enjoy everything about you.
Oh my
You're
gosh,
wonderful.
I feel the same about you.
Love fest.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for listening and watching today to this episode. Be sure to listen and watch other episodes on the Fxck podcast. I will have links to the Texas Advocacy Project on my website, and also I'll have a link to Heather's recent testimony about the Texas House Bill 36, which is a very important bill, at least in Texas. Be sure to check out your bills and your laws in the state where you are, and also resources in the state where you are as well. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Catenya McHenry. Be sure to listen to other episodes on the Fxck podcast, and be sure to say fuck fear every single day. Have a great day, everybody.